Okay, good morning all. Last class we discussed about Raspberry Pi, what are the features of a Raspberry Pi and pin configuration and how to install the OS and what are the onboard components present in the Raspberry Pi. And there are two different types of a pin configuration we have seen, board and BCM. So all the examples which we are discussing here will be using mode as board, not BCM. And I have given the programming flow. Whenever you write a Python script for GPIO, the programming flow will be like first you have to import the package, you have to set the mode, and you have to decide which necessary input and output pin, and then accordingly you have to set the pin, and then you have to read the input or give the outputs. And once all the processing is over, you have to clear the channels, whichever the channels are used, you have to clean up the channel by using the cleanup function. That is the programming flow. So last class we have seen LED program. Now we'll look into push button connection. So push button is a small input device. So you can use the push button to read the input request from the user. This is used for giving some simple input. Based on some input, you can make your particular work process to happen. So for example, this you are designing one IoT based remote vehicle control system. In that, some components like you have kept the for example, that vehicle is used for transmitting, like transferring the your vegetable from one source to another destination. In between, if you want to know that somebody has opened the like open the doors and they just stop somewhere vehicle, so if you want to monitor that, you can keep this kind of a push buttons in the door. So whenever somebody opens the door, that push buttons will go to the release state. Then you can come to know that there's some activity happened, like somebody took the vegetables, or they stopped, driver has stopped somewhere and he has taken some vegetables. Like this you can monitor. So in the real-time applications, you can use it whenever you need some input from the user, you can use this push button. Actually, the push button, if you take, you have 4 pin in the push button. In the data sheet, it would have been clearly given that which is ground and which is the port pin. So accordingly, we have to give the connection, and then the connection is shown in this diagram. So here we have connected one resistor, and then through the for power cable, like power we are given to one pin, and one more pin we are connected to GPIO port. So this blue color is connected to GPIO, one is connected to the power. And for this we have two types of push button status. One is pull up down, pull up, another one is pull down. So for that we have a function called GPIO setup. In this GPIO setup function, we have to set the pull down parameter to either pull up or pull down. So this will tell you that whether your push button is in a low state when it is not, user is not pressed, or it is in a high state when user is not pressed. That is decided by this parameter. Okay, by using this we can write a program to read the state of the button. In the next slide we have explained about the pull down parameter. So here pull up down parameter is one of the parameter which will be in the GPIO setup. GPIO setup is used for setting whether input or output particular port, because it is a input output port. One single port will work as input as well as output. It's a bidirectional. So we are going to set whether particular GPIO pin is working as an input or output by using the function setup. In this function we have, when I'm using input parameter, we have something called as pull up down parameter in that function. So setup function setup is a function to set whether input or output mode. In that we have one parameter called as pull up down parameter. So that pull up down parameter is going to tell that whether your pin will be in a low state or in a high state. So this is very important when you are doing a program. When button is pushed, that time it is in high state, or button is pushed, that time it is low state. That is very important, so that we can accordingly we can do the programming. So by default always we'll be setting as down only. That means when button is in a not pushed state, it will be in a low state. When button is in a pushed state, then it will be in a high state. So by using whether it is in high state or low state, we can program whether user has pressed the button or not. So in the next slide, we have a simple program which is used for reading the value from the button. Okay, here as usual we are using GPIO packages. So we are importing the GPIO packages, and pin number 7 we are used as input port. Pin number 7 we are used as a input port, and we are setting the mode GPIO mode as set mode as board mode. So pin will be considered according to the physical configuration, not in the DCM configuration. And we are using pin 7 for a GPIO, and we are using 3.3 volt pin for giving a power to your push button. Normally your push button will be in a 0 state. Whenever you push, whenever you push, that will become state 1. So we are setting up by using a GPIO setup function. In that GPIO setup function, CNL is your pin number. Directly 7 you can put here, but it is good practice to write the names for each pin, whether you are using it for LED or we are using it for sensor. So what purpose you are using the particular pin, that pin name you can give, so that your readability of your program will be improved. So the pin number 7 we are using it for data port, that CNL I passed here. And then GPIO.in means we are setting the pin number 7 as input port, and this is the GPIO.down. This is your parameter, third parameter, that is a pull up down parameter. You can write that pull up down parameter equal to GPIO underscore PUD underscore down. Like this also you can write. By default, this is a third position is for passing the status of your pin. So directly you can pass. So in the previous 3 slides, before 3 slides, I just gave one parameter here. Like here, previous slides, I have given pull up down parameter in previous slide. So that pull up down parameter is in your setup, it's a third parameter. So this is a constant which are passing GPIO underscore pull down. That means when button is not in the push, button is in a normally it will be in a 0 state. Whenever you push, it will go to state 1. So this is very simple program. Whenever user press the button, you are printing the status. So it is keep on printing the status. So when user if a user press, it will print 1, and then you are calling a sleep method. After some times, if a user has not pressed, it will print 0. So this process will be repeated in the infinite loop. We are used always whenever you people design an embedded application, we should write the program such a way that your program will be running in infinite loop. So here print of GPIO dot input. It reads the input from 7th pin. CNL is 7th pin. 7th pin we connected the push button. So it will print the status of the push button. So if it is pressed, it will print 1. If it is not pressed, it will print 0. So like this, it will be keep printing the status of your push button. So here in this program, we just printing whether 1 or 0 based on users whether they are pressing the button or not pressing the button. And the same way, if a user is press the button, some event has, like something has to occur, what we can do is, that time we can have a method called as add event method. That add event method we can add to this particular pin, so that when user press, the LED has to glow. When user press the button, the LED has to glow, or user press the button, some event has to occur. That event we can specify through some callback functions. Python functions you have to define that callback function. That callback function you can assign to this, so that whenever button is pressed, that button's add event method, I would have specified the callback method. So that callback method will be called whenever you press button. So button press is an event. When event occurs, something has to be done, that you can write it in the function. That function name you can assign to the callback parameter. So in the next slide, we have used both input and output. So previous program, it is only for input and printing the status, whether 1 or 0. And before that, we have seen LED program where you are making the LED to toggle on and off. Now we are having a program, both input and output, which will work together. Now here we have used LED, we have used a LED in 8th pin. We have connected LED in 8th pin, and LED state initially we made it as a true. And then we have one function called as switch LED state. In that switch LED state, what it will do is, LED state already, if it is in on, it will make it off. We use a not here. LED state is true, already it is glowing. It will make it false, and then that it will set in the false state. When user press the button, it is going to switch the LED state. If a user is pressing the button, then the LED state will be toggling. If it is already in on state, it will go to off state. If it is in off state, it will go to on state. This function is called whenever button is pressed. So this function will be added with your buttons add event method. So in the next slide, the continuation of the program is there. Here switch 7 is used for 7th pin is used for switch button. So switch button, once again I am setting the switch button. Switch is 7th pin. GPIO dot in means that is the input pin. So it is going to make it as a input pin. We are using a third parameter, pull down. That means whenever switch is in not press state, it will be 0. Whenever switch is in press state, it will be 1. And now here again you are setting LED. LED is 8th pin. Here already we named LED equal to 8. So 8th pin is your GPIO. That 8th pin will be connected with your LED. So here 7th pin is input pin, 8th pin is output pin. So for 7th pin, I have given the parameter as GPIO dot in. For 8th pin, I have given the parameter as GPIO dot out. So initially, a LED state, I made it as a true there. So initially, your initial state of your LED is in on state. Now, this I have to connect this with your switch button, so that whenever switch button is pressed, this LED has to glow. So for connecting these two, I am using a method called add underscore event underscore detect along with GPIO. GPIO dot add underscore event underscore detect. Here first parameter is for which pin I am going to add an event. That is nothing but 7th pin. 7th pin is where switch. For a switch, I am adding the event. And next is, here you have next parameter as GPIO dot both. So here, what does the both means? You have something called as whenever a switch is pressed, from 0 state, it will go to state 1. That you can assume that it is something like square wave. So from 0 state, it goes to state 1. And until you press, it will be in a state 1. Again, once you release, it will come back to 0 state. So from 0, it goes to state 1. That is, it will go to state 1. You can assume it as a square wave. Okay, 0, it goes to state 1 and it stay in state 1 until it is pressed, and then once again it will come back to state 0. So when it is in state 1, so both indicates that your event will be called whenever it is a raising edge and falling edge. So it is not that something, if I tell it's only in a raising part, GPIO dot some raising, if I give, so event will be called only when it goes from 0 to 1 state. If I consider falling, it will, whenever I am coming back from 1 to 0, that time the event will be triggered. Now both means we are triggering the event in, that means we are triggering the event in raising also, falling also. Sometimes if you consider only raising it, what will happen? You may go fast from 0 to 1, the raising edge duration is very less. So that event may not be like appropriate. It will take very less time. Only that event will be in a event will be triggering. So that's why we are considering both raising edge and falling edge. Anytime the event will be called whenever you switch a button. Now here, first parameter is for which pin you are going to add an event. So the pin number is 7. 7 is, we are already assigned a 7 to SWT switch. So SWT switch means 7th pin, GPIO pin, 7th pin. And both the edges we are considering, event will be triggered either in falling edge or raising edge. Now, when event is occurring, what action we should do? That is given is in the function switch LED state. Switch LED state, in a previous slide, we have written a function switch LED state in the previous slide. You can, we can see the previous, in a previous slide, that switch LED state is a function. In that function, we are just toggling the LED. Already it is in on state, we are making it as off state. If it is in off state, we are making it as on state. True or false, we are toggling by using a function called as, sorry, by using operator called as not. Already LED state is false, not will make true. Already LED state is true, that not will make it false. So that LED state we are setting in a GPIO output port. So GPIO dot output is a function to send a data to the output port. So GPIO dot output LED means 8th GPIO port, then comma LED state. LED state will tell you whether it's a true or false. This is this function will be called in the next slide, where whenever you call a function, whenever you press a button, the event will be triggered, because already I added an event. Event will be triggered. So when event is triggered, it automatically call the function called as switch LED state. The program's previous slide program. Okay. And in this while of true, I'm putting in the infinite loop, and here the user, it will just make, you are making the CPU, because if you are completely dedicating a CPU for this program, it will take unnecessarily until the user press no, unnecessarily the time is waste. That's why you are calling a sleep method. It will go to sleep method. Whenever user press, the event will be triggered. It will come out of a sleep method and it will perform the action. Otherwise, if a user is not pressed any button, it will be in a sleep state only. So this is how this program will work. Like whenever user press the switch, it is going to switch on the LED, provided the LED is in off state. When user presses the button, already LED is in on state, it will make it off. So based on the user's input, it will toggle on and off. So when you are using even input device, accordingly your output device has to work, means you should go with the concept of adding an event to the particular pin. So this is input and output program. So we have seen GPIO, how to configure input port, how to configure output port, what are the packages needed for your GPIO programming. We have to install those packages, and the program flow we have seen. So whenever you are after doing everything, you have to call the cleanup. Before you are exiting the program, you have to call a cleanup function, so that the resources which is used by the program will be cleared. So this is the input output program. So this is a simple Python you have in a syllabus, simple Python programming with Raspberry Pi. So we have seen simple programs. So they may ask you to write some simple program for toggling LEDs or some simple programs. They may not ask all the sensors and all, because we have only one temperature sensor, but other sensors they will not ask. If they ask simple program, toggling the LED, they will ask. Or switch button, reading the data from switch. These three programs, simple programs. If you are clear with these three programs, any simple program if they ask also, you will be able to write. And then next you have in your syllabus, you have temperature sensor. The temperature sensor schematic diagram is given in next slide. Okay. This is temperature sensor. The name of the temperature sensor is DS18B20. So in this temperature sensor, we have 3 pins, pin 1, 2, 3. So in the pin 1, 2, 3, if you take the temperature sensor, the flattened side of a temperature sensor, you have to point towards you. In that middle one is your data. Then left side you have a ground and right side you have a VCC. So this is your temperature sensor pin diagram. Pin configuration. So ground you can connect to any of the ground. There are some 6 ground is there in your 40 pin. You can connect to any of the ground. And VCC, the temperature sensor, it's 3.3 voltage is required. You can connect your VCC to 3.3 voltage. If 5 volt is, they will give a specification when you purchase a temperature sensor. They will give a specification whether 5 volt is required or 3.3 volt is required. So accordingly, you connect your VCC, and then data pin you can connect to the any of the GPIO port. So GPIO port, it will read the temperature sensor. It sends the temperature through the data pin. The temperature is read by your Raspberry Pi. So whatever you are reading, that you can make use. You can display the temperature. Like you can write a simple program to print the temperature on the screen, or else based on the temperature, if a temperature sensor is used in your for example, if it is temperature sensor is used in your AC, your automatically the AC is based on the room temperature. The temperature of your air conditioner we can control. So for that, what we can do is we can write the code such a way that we can keep some threshold temperature. Whenever we read a data from the temperature sensor, we'll compare this with the threshold temperature. If it is less than some threshold temperature, we'll reduce the room temperature. If it is greater than the threshold temperature, we'll increase the like AC. We can modify the accordingly. So automatically, without taking the remote and just we are controlling, we can set it automatically some threshold temperature. Based on the threshold temperature, we can control your AC. Even in electrical car, in engines and all, this temperature sensor is used automatically cooling like your car. So there are so many other applications we have with the temperature sensor. In next slide, we have given a how to connect the temperature sensor with the Raspberry Pi. So here, along with the temperature sensor, they even used LCD display. Anyhow, LCD display is not there in syllabus. We are not going to worry about LCD display connection here. Now we are just taking the temperature. We are just you just can observe the temperature sensor. So in the temperature sensor, we have connected the middle one to the GPIO, and last one black wire to ground, and then your one more wire to VCC. So that from the temperature sensor, we have connected that things to your Raspberry Pi. So they use some resistor. Usually they may use some resistor to restrict the power flow in the temperature sensor. Otherwise, you can directly also you can connect. So in next slide, we have just explained how this temperature sensor is connected with the Raspberry Pi. which protocol we are using. Actually, if you see, they are given in your syllabus, design and wireless temperature monitoring system by using Pi. So we can use some wireless protocol for taking the data from the temperature sensor to the Raspberry Pi. Like those programs, if you take wireless programs, there are a lot of lot of lines of a code is there. Anyhow, such a big explanation of the program and all they'll not ask. What here I did is wired only I'm using, but I'm wired protocol only I'm using, and then by using secure shell SSH from the remote we are running this program. So then it will become a wireless communication only. So that means we are monitoring your temperature from a remote device. So first we'll see how the temperature sensors are programmed by using one wire communication protocol. Now we have it's going to provide a temperature by maximum of 9, like minimum of 9-bit to 12-bit digital Celsius temperature measurement. So 12-bit means 2 power 12. So 2 power 12 means it will be coming in the range of 8000, and 9-bit from 9-bit means 2 power 9 to 2 power 12 digital measurements it's going to give. And then it is using a one wire bus because you have only one data line in the temperature sensor. The middle one is data line, so that we are using one wire bus. And each sensor, if you take, it has this ID. So that is 64-bit ID is given to the each sensor. By whenever you connect more than one temperature sensor through the ID, you can identify. For example, you have kept a temperature sensor in a industry. There are multiple temperature sensors are monitored by single Raspberry Pi. Then we can, for each temperature sensor, one serial 64-bit serial code is there. By using that 64-bit serial code, we can identify individual sensor. So we can connect a multiple sensor to the same one wire bus. Now, if you take your one wire bus by default, GPIO pin 4 is used for one wire bus by default. So it's one wire is a data communication protocol, which is developed by Dallas Semiconductor for low speed data, and it's just take one wire for reading a data. That is the specialty of the one wire protocol. And in next slide, we were like one wire is actually similar to I2C. I2C means inter IC connect protocol. This is used for data transfer between two ICs, and you can use to communicate with the sensors or other sensors like thermometers, humidity sensor, where like over a long range, whenever you want a long range compared to your one wire, you can go with I2C. I2C also serial communication protocol only. You have in I2C, you have master device and slave device. Master device will initiate the transaction. And even in I2C also, you have a unique address to identify the device. In next slide, we are just showing how to connect to what are the enabling you have to do it when you are connected with your one wire protocol. In next slide, how to configure the one wire protocol is shown. So Praveen sir, and here this is monitor of your Raspberry Pi booted with Raspbian OS. This slide shows the monitor of Raspberry Pi booted with Raspbian OS. So in this, you have a left corner, you have a Raspberry Pi symbol. If you click on that symbol, you will have preferences. In the preferences, you have to take Raspberry Pi configuration. From whenever you click that, you will get a configure Raspberry Pi system. Next slide. You will get one tab, the options. So in that you have to choose interfaces. In that you have to choose interfaces. In that we have to make one wire enabled. One wire option we have to make it enabled. Then we have to press OK. This is first we have to do the before you are connecting your temperature sensor to the Raspberry Pi. First you have to do this configuration. So for this configuration you have to go to the Raspberry Pi symbol, from their preferences, then Raspberry Pi configuration. So if you take Raspberry Pi configuration, you have tabbed option. In that interfaces you have to choose. In that interfaces, one wire protocol. You have one wire, that one wire you have to enable. So once you enable one wire, then press OK. Then your setting of Raspberry Pi is done. Now you go to next slide. In this next slide, we have to install the W1 wire 1 thermal sensor packages there. That package already methods are available. All those methods for getting the temperatures from the temperature sensor, reading the temperature from the temperature sensor, for that and all methods are already available. So you have to install the temp sensor packages. So W1 therm sensor is a package which is used for your DSP, that temperature sensor. That W1 means one wire protocol, the W1. So sudo pip install, you are installing that by using sudo command pip install, your package will be installed. Now we have a program for next slide. We have a program Python code for reading a temperature sensor. So already we have installed the package. So from the package, that package we have to import, and you have to even import the time package, because why we need a time is you have to temperature, you should in a frequent interval you are displaying the temperature. So for that time package you are importing the time package from term sensor. This is not a time which is general time packages. This time package we are importing from W1 term sensor only. W1 term sensor you are importing the time package. So import time from W1 term sensor. So after that you have to even import the W1 term sensor object, like class you have to import. W1 term sensor is a class. Small W1 term sensor is a package name. So first line, that is a package. Second line is a class. W1 term sensor is a class. So now we have to create the instance of that class. For creating the instance of the class, we are using we are calling the constructor W1 term sensor. So it calls and create the object of that class. That object reference we are storing it in sensor. Now sensor holds the reference of W1 term sensor class object. So now sensor holds that reference. Now sensor, by using sensor, we can call the method called as get temperature. So sensor dot get temperature, it reads the temperature from the environment where the sensor is fixed. Now it reads the get temperature method, it reads the temperature. That temperature will be stored in the variable temperature.
Hello, ma'am. Jayanti, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. You're not audible with your voice, ma'am.
Jayanti ma'am.
Yeah. So go to the same code, Python code for reading temperature sensor. Yeah. So it reads the temperature and it prints and it goes to sleep, and then once again after some few seconds again it read the current temperature and it prints. So this is how you can read the by using the temperature sensor we can read the temperature and we can print the temperature on the screen. So this is a temperature monitoring system. You have in the syllabus something called as temperature monitoring system in the syllabus. If again they specifically they mentioned the same sensor. This is not like this sensor. There are different temperature BMI some another temperature sensor also is there, but this is the temperature sensor which they have specified in the syllabus. So the same temperature sensor, they may ask you to write the simple Python code to read the temperature also. They may ask some program. So if they ask the program, then this is the simple program. There are a lot other many programs are there, but it is very complicated. They're putting in cloud and all. It is actually not required. You can write the simple program for reading a temperature and printing the temperature on the screen. Now, in your syllabus, they specified you have to design a Wi-Fi temperature monitoring system. So then what we can do is we can run we can connect your temperature sensor by using some other wireless protocol. So that we can do, or else through the remote access by using SSH we can read the temperature. So anything is fine. Next we'll see how to remotely access your Raspberry Pi by using secure shell. How to connect your Raspbian by using secure shell. You have something SSH, secure shell. It's a networking technology which will enable enable you to manage the computer from the command line over the network. So any computer, from the remote computer, if you want to access, you can use SSH. So it's a very handy. You can quickly connect to a Raspberry Pi and Raspberry Pi from other terminal. So for example, Raspberry Pi already is deployed in some remote area, like some of the industries, the Raspberry Pi in each block you're deployed a Raspberry Pi for monitoring the sensors and then controlling that. So already like you are done an IoT based application in Raspberry Pi, you are kept installed in all the like locations wherever you human cannot go there and connect the provided some LCD display connected there, then you cannot run some program from that Raspberry Pi because it is not accessible by human. It is deployed in some remote environment. So what we can do is there will be some control room where everything you can control in a single location. For that, what we can do is you can connect your computer to the Raspberry Pi. Okay, so for this, next slide. So for connecting your Raspberry Pi with SSH, you can have, what you should do is you have to activate your SSH in Raspbian. Already for one wire protocol, we went in one window, you remember, configuration window. So if you take that configuration window, once again, if you go to the configuration window, there is one more option called SSH that you have to enable. That is activate SSH in Raspberry Pi. That's the first step. And you have to get the IP address of your Raspberry Pi by using ipconfig through that through your Raspberry Pi in the terminal. If I use your config command, then it will give the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. And what we should do is by using, if you are using Windows to connect to your Raspberry Pi, we should have installed putty on your Windows application. Or else if you are using your Linux machine, you can start your SSH on Linux terminal. Okay, then there, if you by using whatever the IP address you get there, you can connect to the Raspberry Pi. So whenever you connect to that Raspberry Pi, it will be asking the password of your Raspberry Pi, username and password of Raspberry Pi. If you give that username and password of Raspberry Pi, you can easily connect to your your Raspberry Pi. So once you connected to that Raspberry Pi, what we can do is we can access what are the files, what are the programs are available in Raspberry Pi. We can access that program and then we can run the program from the remote system. So first step is you have to activate the SSH. So next slide, I showed the configuration of Raspberry Pi for initiating SSH. Same process where we use for one wire, no, same process you use. And by using that, we have to go to the Raspberry configuration. In that Raspberry configuration, you have second option in interfaces enabled. SSH is second option. You just enable that. So now your SSH will be enabled in your Raspberry Pi. Now, in your Raspberry Pi, this is a Raspberry Pi terminal, not your system's terminal. This is your Raspberry Pi terminal. In that Raspberry Pi terminal, you have to give a command called ifconfig. So ifconfig, if you give, it will give your IP address of your Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi's IP address you should take. Now, what we should do is we should open a terminal in Mac or Linux on your computer, or SSH client. You have a SSH client called PuTTY. You have to take that SSH client PuTTY, and by using that SSH client PuTTY, you open the terminal. After opening the terminal, you type SSH Pi at IP address. If you type SSH Pi at IP address. In next slide, how to SSH into a Raspberry Pi. So what we should do is open a terminal. If you are already in Linux OS, open a terminal. If you are not in Linux OS, you should install, you are using Windows means you should install PuTTY. That is a Linux based client, SSH client. You have to install that. Already you know the IP address which you found in a previous step. Now SSH space Pi at IP address you should give. Whenever you give that IP address, it will connect to your, it will ask for username and password. Next slide. It will now, whenever you give that IP address, it will ask for username and password. Now username will be by default Pi and password will be Raspberry. Raspberry is your password. So when you give this, in your computer, Raspberry Pi, remote Raspberry Pi, which IP address you are connected, no, that Raspberry Pi you can control through your computer. Now in the next slide, if you see, now from your system, you got, this is actually the current system. Earlier in current system, you had some other matrix underscore something was there. Now I have connected SSH. You can see that I have connected SSH Pi at, this is IP address 168.192.168.2.105. That is IP address of your Raspberry Pi. When you give the IP address of Raspberry Pi, it will ask for password. Then if you type the password, now you will be connecting to a Raspberry Pi. Now you can see that earlier the terminal had your user, like your terminal. Now we got a Raspberry Pi terminal here. We got a complete control of your Raspberry Pi terminal. Now already your Raspberry Pi is connected with temperature sensor. At the temperature sensor program you would have written in the Raspberry Pi. Already you would have checked in the temperature sensor in the Raspberry Pi, you would have got the output. Now from the remote system, we are invoking that particular program. So now your program from that remote system, your Raspberry Pi, that program, it will execute that program. For example, temp.py, I would have given as temp.py. Now if I want, I can open the particular Raspberry Pi, I can go to that particular folder where my program is loaded. I saved the program in particular folder. I can go through with, go to that folder by changing the directory. I can go to that folder. So then after going to that folder, if you put the ls command, it will display all the programs which you already done in your Raspberry Pi. In your Raspberry Pi, if you have written a program temp.py for temperature sensor. So what we should do is, now we have, like, you have changed the directory and reached to the directory where the temperature sensor program is there. Now, if you run that program, py.temp.py, if you run the program, now the temperature sensor program which is working in the Raspberry Pi will be executed in your current system. Once you execute that in your current system, now just your temperature, whatever the output temperature output was printing there, no, in your Raspberry Pi, that will come in your screen. This is how we can say wireless temperature monitoring system. Even we can use some wireless based protocol like Zigbee, Bluetooth. All the protocols are supported in your Raspberry Pi. You can use those protocol and then you can write the program for reading the temperature, or else you can write the program where remotely you are like, it will be whatever the temperature it is reading, no, it is uploading to the cloud. Like this also you can write the program. But this is a simple way, by remote accessing you can write and then show the by your temperature in different system through the wireless communication. This also you can write. So anyhow, you have to use if you, however you write, you have to use one wire protocol for temperature sensor reading. So that one wire protocol, because you are using only one data cable, by using that you have to connect to you are using reading the temperature. So you have to use one wire, but remotely if you want to call, you can make use of SSH for calling, or else some cloud you can use and you can read the temperature and store the temperature in the cloud, and you can show the temperature in terms of graphs in the cloud, like periodically the temperatures are getting modified, like this you can show in the graph. So however you want, you can program it, but this is basically this much if you know for your writing for your exam is more than sufficient. So in exam point of view, if you take Raspberry Pi, if you know what is the temperature sensor, that simple code, and then LED code, and then input button code, and what is SSH, how to connect to SSH. Now if a SSH, no, if you like here terminal wise you are connecting, even that SSH you can connect in a GUI based way also you can connect. So in your system, no, you can install some of GUI based tool. Through the GUI based tool also you can connect. Complete GUI you can bring your Raspberry Pi, complete Raspberry Pi from remote system, you can, that complete Raspberry Pi window you can get it on your screen. Here, instead of just running your single file, you can completely bring your Raspberry Pi user interface window, everything, and then you can open whichever the file you want, you can open and you can run. So by through the secure shell, you can remotely access any Raspberry Pi. Now, in a, like we'll be sitting in some remote place, there will be in our industry, there are some 10 to 15 Raspberry Pi installed in different location. Now, there is something happens, suddenly the program is not working. So instead of going to that Raspberry Pi where some small keypad is connected there, like virtual keypad, and so LCD display will be connected, virtual keypad will be there. They are going and controlling is a difficult task. Instead of that, what we can do is, we can first, whenever you install, no, IP address of Raspberry Pi 1, 2, 3, if a 5 Raspberry Pi is there, you should write it and keep it, because we can't go because reading the IP address will happen in the Raspberry Pi. So we cannot access the Raspberry Pi which is in a remote thing. First you should know the IP address. Already you should have IP address of each Raspberry Pi 1, 2, 3. Like this, you can have on data sheet how many Raspberry Pis are installed in your industry. All this Raspberry Pi you can list it, and then you can have against that you can have IP address. So if you know the IP address, whichever you can connect from any system, you can connect to a Raspberry Pi and you can control. So suddenly the program stop working. Some program for controlling the entire industry or written in the Raspberry Pi. Okay, so suddenly it hangs, it is not working. So then you have to reactivate that particular program. So when you want to reactivate that particular program, instead of going and just taking the like Raspberry Pi and then modifying, it's a tedious task. Most of the time in automotive mobile industries, like you have
mechanical industries where Raspberry Pis will be installed sometimes inside the boilers or inside some of the big, like some of the machines, large machines. Your Raspberry Pi will be kept somewhere which user cannot easily access. So such situation and all, we can use a secure shell. By using a secure shell, you can connect to the Raspberry Pi. This is the how we have to, what are the application, why you want SSH for your connecting to the Raspberry Pi. So by this today session, I think I'll wind up today's session. Next session, we will see the applications of your IoT in the smart cities. What are the smart city architectures? How it is designed? What and all best we can do to improve the by using IoT, how and all we can improve the city, so that many things will become automated and we can control your traffics. You can control like automation in your in malls, so that we can take the most of the information without without human intervention. We can control the entire building, and then parking we can control, traffic you can control. Then there are hospitals which we can have some more invention, so that we can even have a way where you can save many lives. So what are the best way we can incorporate the IoT into the city, so that your city becomes smart city? That part we'll discuss in the next session. So thank you. If you have any doubts, you can ask.